All right, welcome back. All right, episode 45, part two of the Faith and Whatever podcast. I am your host, still, from the last hour. I was still your host then, I'm still your host now. We are talking today about this idea in religion. I'm a huge fan of this podcast called The Hidden Brain.
Oh, not our podcast.
And Faith and Whatever. Faith and Whatever is cool too. But The Hidden Brain is this epic podcast that's put on by NPR, and it's with host Shankar Vedantam, and they talk about...
Did you just make that up?
No, that's his actual name. That's how you pronounce it.
Say it again.
Shankar Vedantam.
All right.
Yeah, and so great podcast. And
say it 3 times fast.
Shankar Vedantam.
Oh my gosh.
I practice his name a lot. And so he had a guest on by the name of Dacher Keltner, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, right? Who talks about he's a social professor or social
from UC Berkeley. No,
social psychologist kind of guy. Really funny, really smart, and there's a bunch of studies associated with him. But the thing that really kicked off and piqued my interest in this was one day he tells the story of when he was biking to work, okay? And he's at a pedestrian crosswalk where there's no light.
Was he riding a Harley?
No, real bike, a bicycle. And dude, he's like a liberal hippie up at Berkeley. He's bikes are bad for the environment. Dude, how big is your carbon footprint, Mr. Trash guy over there? So anyway, he when you come to those pedestrian crossings, right, where there's no light but there's no stop sign, so you just have those white striped lines, to let you know when you're walking, traffic is supposed to slow down, which is a terrible idea to not put anything there. Anyway, so he gets ready to go across the street. Mercedes-Benz comes barreling through the intersection, cuts him off, almost hits him, and the Mercedes-Benz driver looks at him like he's the idiot, right? He's the one at fault. So he began to think to himself, I wonder what would happen if we tested that study and see what would happen. And so they had students hide in the bushes
and jump in the street
actually other students would walk
and
across the street.
Students were chosen to jump into the street.
And so they just kept a running tally of the make and model of the car. And so it turned out that cars that were considered like poor man's cars, your Yaris's, your Yagos, things like that, would stop 100% of the time for pedestrians. But the richer, nicer cars, Mercedes, BMWs, things of this nature, only stopped 46% of the time there. And so,
not going well for you 1%ers.
Right. So he tells this funny story of how this indignant Prius driver emailed him and said, dude, Prius drivers, we care about the world, we stop, blah, blah, blah. So they checked their notes, and it turned out Prius drivers were the worst out of everybody. So, which is, usually a fact in real life. Prius drivers are just the worst people. Yeah. I'm just kidding. Now. So the idea...
I'm not now.
The idea behind this, though, was it showed... that there is a relationship to empathy and power, right? Was the model the theory that he kind of posited.
I don't know, man. My car's got a ton of power, and I still stop at every crosswalk.
And so the claim came to be that they found out that in social situations, reputational power, right? The nicer you were to people, the more empathetic, the more sympathetic you were to people, and things like this, the more likely you were to gain respect and you were to gain power. Not power in the Machiavellian top-down approach, but reputational things that matter, kind of currency in this way. But there was this inverse relationship that the more powerful you became, the less empathetic you became as a result.
There's a study about a decade ago by a Pew Research or somebody similar like that, and in terms of giving to charitable organizations and the non-profit organizations, that not so much in dollar amount, but in percentage of your income, proportion that the basically the poor, the group of people, the more they gave percentage-wise.
Yes, and I'm pretty... So Keltner did a study of that as well. I'm pretty sure he was a part of another study
that might have been
that proved that same thing. And that's actually funny. That's a funny story because that's the story of the widow with her two
mites. That's all she had to give.
Yeah, and so anyway, I thought that was just kind of a cool thing, psychology catching up to Jesus kind of thing. But the idea, the question that I began to have in this as a regard was, we are all powerful people. The three of us sitting in this room are powerful individuals, right?
I beat somebody up the other day.
And I like having power.
In the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
If you're powerful, right, then there's an onus and there's an expectation and there's this thing on you. But I just thought it was I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this ideology.
Also, I think power needs to be defined a little bit here. I'm agreeing
Yeah,
with you.
yeah,
We
yeah,
are powerful
sure.
people, but I think people don't always realize. I don't think people
I
don't
got
always.
the power of Grayskull, and that's about it.
People don't always understand power when we're talking about power. It's not just like whether you're a manager or you have a job that's powerful, or whether you get to command people to do things.
or crush children.
You can have personal power that might look that way, but also as a culture, we're very powerful.
Yeah.
As Americans, we're very powerful.
America.
You and I probably don't feel wealthy, but in terms of relative to the world,
Yeah,
we're all
we
top
are.
5%ers at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So power and wealth and prestige definitely. There's a lot of contexts in which you can be much more powerful than you realize. You can have a much greater authority than you realize. Even though maybe it's not in sort of the classic ways we think about it,
Right.
like being able to command people around you. Things like that.
Right. So so this is a good thing. So they did a study, right, of these people that they brought in students. And Keltner did and his team brought students in and asked them to think of somebody basically that they were better than, in like a position of better, lucky, more smart, whatever it was, and then they brought in after they had them do that and envision
They
themselves
brought in the other person like, yo, do you know what they said about you?
as being powerful, and then they asked them to, or they brought and showed them a picture of like somebody who was sad and somebody who was lesser for the sake of the study than the other individual, and the empathy
Mine would've been
pathways in the mind didn't light up. The empathy pathways in the frontal cortex actually did not light up. They show that in their studies there was a direct correlation between how powerful you felt, how powerful you were based on that study, and the lack of ability to read things in the faces of other people, to read sadness, to read problems, and things like that. So I was curious, what, as a result of this, for us as Christians then, what, Chris, we'll start with you, do you think are the implications of that as for us as Americans, as Christians, as men, and kind of in that city, as white males and things like that? Like, these are all, I think, advantages that we have in a lot of ways. So what do you think are the implications of that if we do have this sense of power? What are the implications that come along with that? What responsibilities do you think that we have as believers in terms of making,
Well, to quote my favorite Bible verse, with great power comes
Jesus
great
wept.
responsibility.
Spider-Man 452.
Yeah, that kind of sums it up, though, right? Like, so elaborate on
My
that.
favorite prophet.
Stanley. Stanley Hezekiah.
So,
Sounds Appalachian.
it sounds like one of our relatives. So if that's the case, what would you define as the personal responsibility in that? You're obviously very self-aware, and you see those things in your own life, Chris. What are some things that you kind of hold yourself to as a result of kind of this fortunate, privilege, blessing, things that we kind of have, being who we are and where we're at?
Well, I think, honestly, I would add to this, and this is going slightly outside the scope of the question, but it is related very closely, is that people don't realize that state of minds have to be practiced. You have to practice them. You have to do them intentionally. Like you aren't going to be a charitable or an empathetic person just naturally. Mm-hmm. Empathy isn't natural. It's something that you choose to practice, and as you practice it like a muscle, you get muscle memory, and then empathy does become more natural to you, right? But you can't just, these things are not necessarily just ingrained. They're not just built in. They're not things that are just human. Mm-hmm. They have to be practiced. And so I would say that related to this question is that if empathy is important to us as Christians, then you have to purposely practice it to develop the muscle of empathy. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, honestly, you just get caught up in your own business, right? It's very easy to be just caught up in your own business.
Yeah, and so I was thinking about that and how it kind of relates to us for 2017, and this is a little bit, again, moving out of what we were talking about, but what do you think, right, are some good things, or maybe a thing or two that we can do to specifically practice the idea of empathy in the upcoming year? What would be one thing that you would like to see, or that you would encourage somebody to do, or that you yourself would even want to do in this year?
Well, I'll give you a small one, right? This was good advice given to me. How many times have I, and anybody else, been in your car, you see the guy in the street corner wants money for whatever, he's poor and needs money.
Throw nickels at him?
And then, thank you. That's very empathetic. Very empathetic, Josh. But you spend so much time thinking about whether you have the money or whether you should give the money. You get caught up in the whole theory of it, and then they'll turn
Is
light
he gonna
turns
buy
green.
drugs? Is he gonna
Right.
buy alcohol?
The light turns green, and then you drive off, and you just got away with not having to give money, right? Almost had to give $1. But if you want to practice empathy, have some money set aside in your car that's for immediately giving anytime you see need. Right. And so now that's already there, it's already dedicated, and it's going to be there. Next time you see the person on the street corner, just give the cash without thinking about it. It's there, and it's for
Ramsey
giving.
says every dollar has a name, so make that your homeless name.
Yeah. And you don't have to give $50. If you feel like it might be wasted, well, $50 is a danger, right? But you know what? No harm is going to come from your $1 or $2, right? You can give those $2. It's even if they get wasted or spent the wrong way. Okay, that's not a big deal. You lost $2, less than the price of your Starbucks coffee. And when it comes to homeless, people often judge homeless for like things like alcohol and cigarettes. But as we've learned from good friends of ours who have worked with the homeless, the reason why alcoholism and smoking is so prevalent is because it warms the body, even if it's a false sense of warmth.
Right.
It warms the body, and when you are in the elements 100% of the time, a little bit of warmth helps.
And cigarettes suppress appetite.
Yeah, and alcohol gives calories for surviving. So
Obviously, this is not the best way to go, but
it's, if it's what you got, right?
Yeah, you
and
do what
so
you can to get by.
this is why
Or if they don't want, if they feel they can't do that or whatever, buy them a meal.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Practicing empathy is also maybe giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and not judging their character based on an activity the way you interpret it. All right. So
Are we supposed to judge?
Nope.
Only God can judge me. Hashtag. Chris, what do you think would be like a good thing that would be a wise practice to try and make one's habit in the year to come, specifically in the field of empathy?
I kind of like where James is going with that. A lot of times we are supposed to give not necessarily just for the person we're giving to. To some extent, we need to give for ourselves to keep ourselves in that mindset of giving, of being empathetic, of being generous. And it's, I don't want to call it a test. I don't like this idea of tests and this and that. Yeah. But, that kind of, we need to give for ourselves.
Yeah. It's a part of our own character building.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So I didn't have anything terribly long planned for today, but these studies were really impactful to me. If you want to read Dacher Keltner's new book, it's called The Perils of Power, or The Power Paradox, The Peril of Power, or something like that. Just type in DACHER space KELTNER, Dacher Keltner.
What these studies do ultimately is they challenge our look. I fall into this thing. When I hear a study that tells me about me, I immediately stifle. Right? I immediately my immediate response is, well, that's not me. Like I'm 100% empathetic all day. I'm pathetic.
All day I'm pathetic.
Don't tell me how much power I have. Right? It's like that's the immediate gut response, because I don't want somebody speaking as if they know more about myself than I do. But what these studies should do is challenge us to like be open to criticism, and to there's a good way and a bad way of criticism. If you let criticism bring you down, then you're doing the wrong thing, I would say. But take criticism to make yourself better. Listen to criticism and do better by it. Now the criticism was a tool, and in this case, we all could be a little bit more empathetic. Some of us a lot more empathetic. When it comes right down to it, people often claim that they are, I'm a good person.
Yeah.
And I would challenge the thought that just because you don't
You're garbage.
No. Just because you don't spend all day doing bad doesn't make you good.
Yeah,
it might just make you neutral.
Yeah.
And neutral's not bad.
What if I'm chaotic neutral?
I understood some of that.
That's your skill tree. So to be good takes actual good action, right? Not just not doing bad. And you have to practice goodness. You have to practice charity. You have to practice empathy. And they're hard. They're really hard. And sometimes they're draining. And if you need a break from it, that's totally understandable. But
go kick
it's
dog.
A muscle. Oh, yeah, that's right. If it gets too upsetting, go beat your pets. That's the life
children,
lesson here.
Pets are okay. Which is good. Yeah.
Michael Vick is a saint.
Yeah. So
did they do this study in different cities?
Yeah, they replicated it all through the country.
Because I want to know where the most jerks are. I'm gonna guess probably New York. Yeah, I'm just kidding. New York.
So, all three of our New York viewers. Hi, Jesse. So
or
be sure.
Philadelphia.
Oh, dude, Philly's the worst. Philadelphia's trash.
Nobody likes Philadelphia.
Yeah. So that was all I had. Chris, what's our time at?
14:55.
Yeah,
We're out.
Feels pretty good to wrap up. So
Shut
be
it down.
practicing empathy this year. Give it a shot this month and let us know how it went in the comments below. Drop a like if you were a fan of this video. Drop a dislike even if you didn't. Be sure to follow us on all forms of social media. I'm at Josh_Carmen. Garrett is at TStudentsLife. Jamothy is at JamesYuile. And Christopher is at Marion
The
Ranch.
ghost of Garrett.
All the time. Welcome. Thank you. See you soon.